even through all of these mental health challenges, one of the things that I've seen in you over and over again as I'm just sort of sitting back and observing is I understand that there's mental health challenges, but your attitude and the way you approach all of it is exemplary. You are the type of person who, in spite of obstacles, finds a way to see things in the most beautiful way. You look for opportunity. You always keep the right things in the right order, like your love for your husband, your family, your
Mhm.
extended family, all of that is always at the forefront of all of your decisions. So I know that, for a while, yes, you had these values around money, but I don't believe you ever abandoned your true values, which I think is the thing that is, as you grow this farm and grow these businesses, is the thing that's going to bring you tremendous wealth. Have you ever flown Southwest?
Southwest Airlines, maybe, but they don't have it where we live.
Yeah, I only fly them in the States, of course, because they're not a Canadian carrier, but they're pretty awesome.
Okay.
And they have this whole boarding procedure that would be foreign to us up here. You know how every Canadian always complains, like, why do we board the plane from the front to the back? And people are in the way we should be boarded. Everybody has an idea of how planes should be
Yeah.
boarded. And they've
Yeah.
done so much research on this and determined it actually doesn't matter if you board from the back or the front. It doesn't make it any faster. Humans are just idiots, no matter how you line them up. When you fly Southwest, you board by kind of rows or sections, A, B, C, and then like the numbers or whatever. And when your boarding group gets called, you go on the plane and sit in whatever seat you want. You pick your seat. So, of course, when you're the last on the plane, it's like only middle seats available.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And there was a guy recently in the news who apparently somebody was talking about how this happened on their flight. He was going up and down the aisles with a $20 bill, going, does anybody want to switch? And of course, guess how many people took him up on it?
Nobody, because
Nobody.
nobody wants to sit in the middle seat.
Nobody. And if you do the pre-boarding, you would have paid more than that
Yeah,
to
right.
board. And anyway, so it was a dumb idea. But I was so excited about my Southwest flight. I think I was going from Vegas to Orlando.
Okay.
And I am in the lineup and I'm a little confused because I don't know why, but the gate had changed a couple of times and whatever. And so I'm racing, of course, as always. That's how I get my cardio, is running to the gate. And I get there and I figure out, and they're calling my, section and seat, number. And so I'm like running up to the front and I give him my little boarding pass. And the guy was so cute. He was like, oh, hello, where do you think you're going today? And I said, Orlando. And he looked at me, he's like, well, look behind you. And I turn around and look at everybody in line. He's like, everybody wave. And everybody waved at me. And he's like, these people are going to Indianapolis. Would you like to go there? And I was like, no. He's like, well, then you want gate B12. And then he like sent me on my way. I just love customer service people who can keep things light and funny. Like
Yeah.
he wasn't like, you're in the wrong line, lady. He wasn't, you know what I mean? He was so funny about it that I actually didn't mind that I had no idea what I was doing and how to board. But next time I'm going to carry $100 bill with me and see who will move seats. Like I'll just do it as an experiment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
much would I have to pay someone at the last minute
Right.
switch me a seat?
Okay, well, don't start with 100. You got to start lower than that and see what happens. I want to see
I'm
like
telling
the
you,
lowest amount somebody's willing to take.
I have a funny feeling starting at 100 is pretty darn low because once you're settled into that.
But it also depends on how long the flight is. Like if I'm going on a long flight, I am not changing seats for anything. Like you couldn't pay me enough because I need to put my head against the window. I
Yeah.
need to see like where I am because I need to be oriented,
What
right?
if I threw in some snacks?
Oh, is it chocolate?
I don't know how you did this. We didn't bribe her with a $100 bill or any chocolate, but we landed a killer interview today with Suzanne, who got the hell out of debt and is here to share her story.
Suzanne, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. We are so excited to have you here. You posted in our Facebook group,
Mhm.
and I think that perhaps you were a little shy about coming on and talking with us, but you're here and you're doing it. And I think that this is so cool when people that are in phase 3 and you're gotten the hell out of debt can come on and share your story. So tell us all the things about your money story.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me. I am excited to be here, and I am glad that I didn't have too much time to think about it.
Well, and Carrie, I need you to know she's been pushing herself out of her comfort zone in more than one way because she's been going live in the underground coaching group. This girl is all about expansion right now. So this is super cool for
Yeah.
me to witness and be a part of too.
Listen, we're nice to talk to. We're not scary, Suzanne.
It was more so I didn't have enough time to like fangirl and get nervous is really what it was.
Okay, go. You tell us where your
Yeah.
money story starts.
Okay. In 2020, the world got shut down. My husband and I were living in town with our two kids, and he was at trade school. And when COVID shut down the world, and training said that they weren't going to continue that term of school. So my husband came home. We kind of planned our whole entire life around him finishing this ticket. And we were waiting. We were waiting to buy a farm until he was finished. We were waiting to grow our family until he was finished. And we kind of came to the point of like, we actually have no control over any of this. So why are we waiting? Which led to us buying a farm. While we were looking, my mom started to send me MLS listings with two houses on the property. And then my parents came to us and said, hey, you know how we've always joked about coming with you when you move to a farm? We're not actually joking. So if you could buy a place that has two houses, it just worked out that we found a great property in a great location that had two houses that was just the perfect fit for us.
Okay, wait. Forget about the real estate. We have to dive into something much more. Because Carrie and I are both now picturing ourselves with parents on the property. And I can tell, like, you must have an amazing mom.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would live with Carrie's mom, no problem. Like, I think we could do a mom swap. But
Yeah. It's different when they don't belong to you.
yeah. Okay, I just wanted to be like, wait a second, hold on. Everybody right now is like, wait a second. There's a mom scale. Sounds like she's a gold medal mom. So this is great.
Yeah. Very, and like she's so respectful of our privacy and our space. And like the way it worked out is on Thursday, we put in an offer on this farm. Friday, I finished my teaching year. On Saturday, our offer was accepted. On Sunday, we sold our house in town. And on Monday, we found out we were pregnant.
Whoa.
So this was at the end of June. Fast forward 6 weeks to the week before we were moving out of our house in town into an RV for 8 weeks or more. We found out that there was not just one baby, but there was two. That was a thing that happened.
Wow. Okay. Wow. It's
I
good.
have so many goosebumps because that is a lot. Oh,
Yeah.
like I'm trying to digest all of that right now.
Were you sleeping at this point, or were you just stressed about all of the like new changes that were coming up?
Well, I actually, in a sense, felt relieved because I was struggling so hard. And I had tough pregnancies. Like my first two weren't super easy, but like this was next level.
Mm.
And I couldn't figure out what was wrong. So I was like, oh, because I'm growing two people. So it is okay that I just like fall asleep on the floor in the middle of the kitchen while I'm packing. That's all right. I'll give myself some grace. But twins run in our family. We decided to start our family young because all the twins happened after 35. So I was like, okay, if we're done by the time I'm 30, we're super safe. Like limited risk. I was wrong. We called my mom from the parking lot of the ultrasound clinic and I was sobbing. My cousin, her mom, and my dad are twins, and she also has twins.
Oof.
So her twins are 10 years older, and I was 19 when they were born, and I spent a lot of time with them. So I knew exactly what was about to happen in our home, and I was devastated. I called my mom crying, and my mom laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed and said, aren't you going to have fun? And then my husband said, like, Margaret, you're our neighbor. And then it was just silence because she realized this was her circus too. So that's where it all started. For
My
us,
goodness, I love a circus.
up until that point, like we had managed to make it through our marriage with no debt. We had our mortgage that we had been aggressively paying down because we knew we wanted to buy property. Getting lending for ag properties can be super tricky. So we knew that the more we had, the better it would be. We had aggressively saved in as many ways as we could. But when we were like in the process of buying the farm before we knew about the twins, we had a great relationship with the family we were buying from. So they had us come out and essentially go through all of their stuff. And we got to pick what we wanted to stay on the farm and we just bought it from them. And then they had a huge garage sale. So we were trying to make sure that we were taking a pretty beefy mortgage. So we needed to make sure that our bank account looked very, very friendly for our lender. So my parents lent us about $3,500 for us to pick up some of the things that they were selling. Like they had an above ground pool that they had built a deck for. So it made sense for us to buy the pool. Had I been thinking about it, I would have written it into the offer, but I wasn't that smart at that point. I did that with the barbecue and with the bar stools for the kitchen, but I missed the swimming pool. So my parents lent us that money and we figured by the fall, like no big deal, we would have that paid off. We just kind of needed to close on our mortgage and then we would send my parents the money. Enter the twins. Plans changed. I drove a 2007 Volkswagen Jetta with 380,000 kilometers on it. I had done a bunch of research. I knew I could fit 3 car seats across the back, so I was not going to upgrade that baby until it either died or we had a 4th. Inconveniently, we had our 3rd and 4th at the same time.
Right.
So after buying a farm with a huge mortgage, we had to buy a vehicle. And for our family, the way we've kind of viewed a lot of our decisions is we've made something called family values. And like it started to eliminate decision fatigue. My husband and I, over several years, have like worked to figure out like what are the rules we live by, essentially, like what is like the core of our family. And a couple of those have to do with money because money is key to pretty well everything. So one of ours was we buy what we can pay for. So we don't finance things.
Do you want more? I know you do. Why wouldn't you want more?
More
of
what?
this?
What do I want more of?
More of this. Come hang out in the online course, Forget the Hell Out of Debt. The link is in the description. You just got to click it, sign up, and we'll see you in there.
And another one is we buy things once. So that means that if we're going to purchase something, especially a big ticket item, we're going to take the time to buy something that is exactly what we want, that's going to last us for a really long time. A great example of this is my stove died one year. And it was luckily in June, but I really wanted to upgrade to a gas stove. And I had picked out a stove and it was a little bit out of our budget. So we went all summer without a stove. We barbecued, we used the Instant Pot. One of the burners still worked, so we used that burner. We camped a lot, so it was okay, but that's just really how we wanted to live our lives.
That is so resourceful.
Looking back, like I maybe would make a different choice now, but here we are. We needed to upgrade our vehicle, so we decided to purchase a van that we knew would last us for a really long time. We live rurally, so I didn't want to have to deal with maintenance, and especially with the twins coming and all
At this
that.
point, Suzanne, you're so fertile. I would buy a bus. Like I would just.
I hope not. I did buy a Honda, and Hondas are the only van that you can put 6 car seats in. So
Carrie is a Honda fan right there.
yeah, I don't love it, but I don't think I would love any minivan. So it's like,
oh no,
Suzanne.
blasphemy. Oh no.
I know.
Did
But
you
again,
just say that out loud to
Okay.
me?
Carrie, have you ever put a sheep in the back of your van?
Fair. No.
Yeah.
But
That's
now
it.
we're gonna try.
Yeah, I have sheep. You come on over. I'll lend you one.
Okay, why is that hard? But I feel like my van could fit a sheep.
It
Yeah.
certainly can, but then you have a kid sitting beside a sheep. So you have to like, which kid is the least likely to put their fingers through the bars and have them dead? So
Hey, I got you. I'm picking up what you're putting down. This
Yeah.
is a whole other level. I got it.
Best idea for our weekend, Carrie. We're gonna get a sheep. We're gonna go through the drive-through. And if we can return the sheep without spilling coffee or causing a scene, we
Yeah.
get like some kind of prize.
yeah,
But also, I feel like this could be a new consequence for my children when they misbehave. It's like, listen, you're sitting next to the sheep. You don't listen to me. I'm putting you next to the sheep.
yeah. So that's how we got the minivan. And we were incredibly blessed in that my dad was able to help us finance it. So we sat down with the financing guy at the dealership. We had half of what we needed to buy a new van. And we like went through all the numbers and we're kind of thinking on it. And my dad approached us and said that he would allow us to finance it through him. So we made.
Who are these parents that
Yeah,
you
I
have?
know.
Are they
I
adopted?
don't lend them out
Okay.
and they're not looking for more. So
Son
I
of
like
a.
these people a lot.
I know. So we made a loan agreement with my parents, and we like set up an interest rate that was fair, and my dad was happy because it was performing better than his investments at that point. So like it made sense. Like we had a Google spreadsheet and like I tracked everything. And so we were super, super blessed to be able to make that work. After the twins were born, my husband finished his trade schooling. So industry and training allows you to have $4,000 loans each school period that you go into. And when you apply for the loans, you also get bursaries. So we'd always taken them out. We would take that money because there was no interest on it. We would typically stick it somewhere that would make us a little bit, and then would just pay it back the day before the interest started. So we had taken out $16,000 and we had saved most of it, but like with buying the house, some of it got used. So it kind of disappeared more than we would have liked. So we do consider that full $16,000 in our debt. Following that, my husband started a business. So we had twins that were 5 months old. We had just bought a farm and we were now business owners, which again would make different choices. But there we were, living our best lives, making it happen. So when we first started off, my husband was just using a pickup truck that we already had. We bought a special set of drawers for the back of it, and he was just making it work, and it made his days miserable. It just wasn't super functional. So we knew we were going to have to upgrade before we were ready to pay cash for something. And he, again, had picked a van that would meet his needs and meet his needs for a long time. Unexpectedly, that September, my husband's dad passed away. So he was diagnosed with cancer on September 3rd and passed away on September 29th. So just rocked our world. See, I wrote this down so I wouldn't cry, and I think I'm going to cry anyways. But my love likes to leak out of my eyes, is what I've always told my students. So,
Yeah, but it's, if you didn't cry, that would be awful too.
yeah.
So, yeah.
So hard. And obviously he must have been an important guy in your life too.
Yeah, and so he also ran a plumbing business. So it was huge for my husband, like an incredible resource as he started his business. So to lose that, and then we kind of had to go through this season of transition because his dad wasn't planning on dying. So he had to get his affairs in order. He had huge jobs that he was not finished. So we had to kind of set our business aside, and he went and worked Monday to Friday in the community that they lived in, and then was coming home on the weekend and was trying to keep up with some of the jobs he had already had lined up. And he came home kind of at the end of November and just collapsed. In that time, he almost bought a van worth twice as much as what he bought, and it would have been devastating for us. But he did end up buying a work van and had to outfit it. So that was another $35,000. My parents also own a business, so they were able to finance it. Same thing with the way we did our van through their business. So we have like worked really hard to stay on top of that. A year later, the 1 year anniversary of my father-in-law's passing, it became super evident that my husband was really not okay. Like small ways at first, and then we had a project that we needed to do in the yard. We have 3 different septic systems. One of them needed to be fixed, and then one of them needed to be upgraded. And we had a company booked to do it. And at the last minute, my husband canceled the company and decided to do it himself, which like it's in his skill set. He has the training, like it wasn't super sketchy. It was like a little like, okay, because he didn't really have the time and we didn't really have the resources, but he went for it. And then this project just kept getting bigger and bigger. And every time I was like, we do not have the money for this. He genuinely thought that the money was there. Like he kind of like that true expenses, like money that has been spent but is still in your account type thing. So like he was just looking at the bottom line and wasn't himself by any means. So at the end of that, he had spent close to $30,000 in less than a month.
Wow.
Which we were not expecting at all. So we were able to cover half of it. And then $15,000 went onto a line of credit that we had from our wedding 10 years before that we had never used. I didn't actually know it was still there. So it was good that it was there because we unfortunately needed it. Following that, it was a huge wake up call for my husband as far as like, oh, I actually do need some help. I need to make some changes here. And he did that. Like, I love my husband. I
I
think
love him too. I don't even know him, and I love him so much.
he's one of those guys that just is so outstanding.
But like
And
grief and stress and like
yes,
the new family and the little ones, which probably
oh
took
my
up so much time and energy.
yeah,
And like there's just a ton going on from him and the stacking effect of all of those things. Like,
yeah,
of course, he would not have been okay. And I'm
yeah,
so glad
yeah.
that he had that realization and didn't just try and power through.
Exactly, and I think that it became evident that the first November after his dad died, when he came back from working away, that he was not okay, and, like, we just pieced it together
Mhm.
for that first little bit. We couldn't continue on with that, so if you've been keeping track, that adds up to $99,500 in debt
Wow.
that we
Wow.
in less than 18 months.
Mhm.
So coming from having $0 in debt and really not necessarily priding ourselves on it, but like being really determined that that's how we were going to live our lives, it was a huge shift
Well,
for
yeah,
us.
that's an identity
Um,
shift because now you're like, oh, we aren't said we were going to be. And that
yeah,
feels yucky. Yeah.
exactly. And so that first year that we had the twins, open the business, like finish school, Matt's dad died, our total income was a third
Ooh.
of what we were used to it being. Looking back, I do not know how we did it, but we didn't take on any consumer debt in that time. Like, we didn't have to put anything on credit. I don't know how. We just did it. Like, lots of resourcefulness. When I kind of realized, like, ooh, we're gonna have a problem here, I started to tutor. So my mom would watch the babies and our big kids, and I did some tutoring just out of our home, and it just had to happen. So we just made it happen. From there, we're making our minimum payments on our debt to my dad mostly. And then we had to, in 2022, we had to introduce that minimum payment to our line of credit, and just kind of continued like that until I went back to work in fall of 2022. And that was a tough pill to swallow because when we bought the farm, I had a vision for a business that I really wanted to build. And going back to teaching was not a part of that.
Mhm.
And I kind of thought that by the time I was ready to go back 18 months after the twins were born, that I wouldn't have to. And the reality was I had to.
Mm.
So I went back to teaching part time, which was an incredible blessing that my division was willing to work with me. And we pushed through and kind of did a little bit on the business. I did a program through Young Agrarians. And then like, we just buckled down. Every penny went to it.
And how was your husband doing during that whole time when you went back to work?
Goodish.
Goodish, yeah.
His business, the way that he started it, made a lot of sense. Like, so when we started our business, we weren't starting from nothing. So we didn't really have a lull in jobs coming in,
That's
which
good.
was great. And then the only debt that the business had was the van. So to
Awesome.
not have to service a debt while you're starting, like not have to service huge debt while
Mhm.
you're starting, I think made a huge difference in how he was able to do that.
And I know we talked about like how much you love him and respect him,
Yeah.
and I think all of that's important, but like how were you doing? Because you had all this debt, the loss of your father-in-law who you love,
Mhm.
dealing with your husband's challenges while he
Mhm.
was doing like all the grieving, looking after little twins plus all the
Yeah.
babies, going back to work.
Yeah. We also, to make the story more interesting, we're homeschooling.
Oh my goodness.
So
Okay.
Ah.
the way that that came to be was in 2021 when my father-in-law got sick. It was like the day that we got the call, we were actually waiting at the end of the driveway to pick my daughter up from the bus from her first day of school. And I got the phone call and I said, like, she's not going back, is she? And my husband was like, I don't think she can. Because my father-in-law was in the hospital, only 2 people were allowed in, and that was my mother-in-law and my husband. And if my husband got sick, you couldn't switch it out. And
Right.
I just from the very beginning knew that it wouldn't be long.
Mhm.
So I was worried. We live in a community that was very casual about how they approached COVID. We had huge numbers at that point in time, and I was really afraid that our family would be sick and we would miss something really, really important.
Yes.
So we made the decision to keep her home for like the first week and then 2 weeks just as we were trying to figure out what was happening. And then the end of September is like funding cutoff. So if we were going to homeschool, we needed that homeschool funding, which isn't huge, but it makes a difference. So we decided to just commit to homeschooling. I was home on mat leave. We could make it work. So we made it work. And so we kept our daughter home, and she had an incredibly successful year. She really just needed the time to grow. It was so successful that we actually kept her home again when I went back to work, because I was just teaching 2 or 3 days a week. So one day she stayed with my dad, and that was a bit of a hot mess. And then the other day, she would go to another homeschooling family that had 5 kids. She's the same age as their youngest. Like, this is a pro homeschooling mom. So she kind of like kept me accountable. It was just a lot. And I never like to say, I think the terms around mental health and mental illness are so interesting, because we automatically are admitting defeat, because so many people say, I struggle with. So I struggle with depression. I struggle with anxiety. And when that's what our brain is told when you have a depressive episode or when you're debilitated by anxiety, it's a struggle right away. And I don't like that. So I try to use, like, I work hard to manage depression and anxiety.
Mm.
And the way that I like to think about it is, sometimes I hold it and sometimes it holds me. I was a hot mess too. Like, no one was good. And we just were like very much so pedal to the metal, get her done. And then kind of collapsed closer to the end, which is when I found get the hell out of debt. Because that last $9,000 didn't matter that we'd paid off $90,000 in debt. It was never going to happen. I never, ever thought we were going to pay that last $9,000 off. And I found your podcast and was like, these are my people.
Hmm.
And then we got it done. But yeah, so I
I
had to
wish
work.
we knew you. I would have come over in a hazmat suit and just hugged you. And Carrie would have taken the babies and
I
just
would
Yeah,
have, yeah,
maybe
the
forever,
babies,
but
we would have been out with the goats.
that's right.
yeah.
Sheep.
She,
Sheep.
one of our babies is like our own personal Sour Patch Kid. She is like
Oh.
the most delightful, miserable
Wait,
human
wait,
on
wait.
the face of the earth.
Cabbage Patch Kid or Sour Patch Kid?
Sour Patch Kid.
What does that mean?
She doesn't like you already. She would cry until she turned purple as a baby because somebody looked at her.
I have
Like,
one of those. Now I have a name for them.
yeah,
My Sour Patch Kid.
like, she's delightfully terrible. Like, she's got fiery red hair and the angriest eyebrows that you have ever met.
Oh,
Like,
This is one of the twins, Suzanne?
yeah, like, she didn't even like my parents, and they were here every day.
that's
She's, like,
great.
slightly friendlier now. But and, like, I've struggled with depression and anxiety my whole adult life, so we learned very early on that we had to, like, depression-proof our lives, which, like, you don't get to plan this. It just happens. Like,
Yeah.
it just comes when you don't want it to often. So we built our budget knowing that, like, we consider it a true expense in our budget, that there are going to be times when we need to order out more, when we need to buy more convenience foods, when I need to hire more childcare, when I need to just have money because my brain isn't working quite right.
Mm.
So that we have built that in from the very beginning. And I'm glad that we did, because then there was no guilt when we were making pennies and I still had somebody coming over twice a week to help me. We just kept true to those things. Like, it was like our latte.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I was going to say
honestly,
that's exactly it. Like,
yeah,
that Erin says that is that what we have to do is figure out how to get those things that
yeah.
are so important to us, that are the non-negotiables, into that budget so that we can do what we have to do.
how long did it take you to pay off the last $9,000?
We were just kind of making like minimum payments, maybe a little bit more than minimum payments, September through December. I said to my husband, like, okay, we listened to your podcast, we listened to your book, we had started Naked Money meetings, we had gone away for a weekend and like did the quiz while we were gone. And like, we're really changing our mindset on money, because at that point, our goal wasn't to build wealth. Our goal was just to get out of debt.
Mm.
And like, that sucked. Like, it wasn't like, I didn't feel like there was anything at the end of it. So shifting it to paying off our line of credit was just a line item on our budget, and a step to building wealth really made a big difference for us. So I built my quick and dirty in December, and then between January and March 9th, we paid off the last $9,000 worth of debt.
And you didn't think you were going to be able to do it. Hey, that's
No,
amazing.
yeah. My original goal was beginning of May, because I wanted to stop subbing, because the farm is so busy May and June. I didn't want to have to feel like I had to go to town to work off farm on those days or in those months. So originally, like, when I think Erin did a goal setting or maybe it was part of the 10-day challenge that I was like, okay, my pee your pants goal was May. And then you had another webinar that I did that I was like, okay, no, I can do better. Let's do April 1st. And then I ended up having a surgery booked for March 11th. And I said to my husband, like, if it's not done by then, it's not getting done until the end of June. And I don't want that. So we just did it.
Okay, but tell us how. How were you doing it? What were you doing to bring in extra money to pay this off?
Yeah, so I took on a couple extra students for tutoring. I picked up a short-term contract. So the way that subbing works is like we get a daily rate, but if you pick up a shift that's more than 3 days, you get grid pay. And it's grid pay with no deductions because you're not paying into your pension or anything like that. So I was able to pick up a 3-week long contract that made a huge difference in getting rid of that. We were able to draw a little bit more from our business. We set up a health spending account through the Chamber of Commerce. So I was able to draw our premiums from the business then, which I figured that was money that I had budgeted to come out of our account anyways. So
Yeah.
when the reimbursement came back in from our health spending account, I just put it directly onto our debt. I went for 6 weeks without buying anything but bread, bananas, and milk.
Are you kidding?
Because
Are you kidding? Is that is that an exaggeration or do you actually
no,
mean that?
I actually went 6 weeks. I went from the beginning of January to the middle of February with I may have, like, picked up a couple of other small things here and there, but our weekly grocery budget was less than $50. We farm, so we have a freezer full of meat. We have chickens, so we have eggs all of the time. We eat the eggs that are ugly or not quite decent enough to sell. So we have a surplus of that. We have a garden, so we had 300 pounds of potatoes in the cold room. We had our canning. So we just really focused on eating through our canning, eating through our freezer, being super intentional about it. And I say, like, our grocery budget was $50. Our grocery budget was $50 a week, and our eating out budget was $50 a week because I needed that to happen. So like
Yeah.
we weren't like we just made it work.
You're feeding a family of 6 that way. I do think that's super inspirational. I have a pantry full of things, Suzanne, downstairs. I don't know what lives in the back of that pantry. Erin has a
So
very
scary.
organized pantry. Right now, you're inspiring me to try to cook from my stinking pantry instead of going
Yeah.
to the grocery store to buy something I don't need.
And
I
like,
think we have to watch because people sometimes hear stories like this and think, oh, I could never.
yeah,
But the challenge is she didn't do it forever. And sometimes what happens when we challenge ourselves, even for a short amount of time, to do the pantry Olympics or to just go, you know what, I'm going to see how far I can stretch $50. What it does is it taps into a new level of resourcefulness. So it's not about being restrictive. It's about growth. It's about seeing
yeah,
what you're capable of. And that's the mistake people make. That sometimes you're like, oh, well, I want to pay off my debt, but I don't want to restrict myself. Well, you're also not giving yourself the opportunity to learn a wealth mindset, which Suzanne clearly has and has always had.
I think that that's the biggest thing, that shift from restriction, like I can't go grocery shopping, to how can I not go grocery shopping?
Right.
And like, really and truly, and I've done this from the time the babies were little, I grocery shop at Costco once a month. And for a very long time, because it was really hard to go anywhere and do anything with 4 tiny people, if I couldn't buy it at Costco, I didn't buy it. That was
Yeah.
just it. So we were used to making things work anyways. But yeah, bringing 4 kids to a grocery store is a really good way to not spend a lot of time in grocery stores.
Well, and I want to just commend you also because I think even through all of these mental health challenges, one of the things that I've seen in you over and over again as I'm just sort of sitting back and observing is I understand that there's mental health challenges, but your attitude and the way you approach all of it is exemplary. You are the type of person who, in spite of obstacles, finds a way to see things in the most beautiful way. You look for opportunity. You always keep the right things in the right order, like your love for your husband, your family, your extended family, all of that is always at the forefront of all of your decisions. So I know that, for a while, yes, you had these values around money, but I don't believe you ever abandoned your true values, which I think is the thing that is, as you grow this farm and grow these businesses, is the thing that's going to bring you tremendous wealth.
Yeah, and it goes back to those family values again. Like, we made all of our decisions based on those, and we sometimes you have to rank them. You have to prioritize. You can't hold everything. So like we prioritized buying things once over buying things that we could pay for in cash.
Yeah.
And that was an active choice. And because it was an active choice, I think it was a lot easier to deal with. We weren't passive participants in it. We made this decision, therefore we were going to deal with this decision.
I love that so much.
Mhm.
I'm so proud of you. I would just congratulations on all of your success. Because honestly, we talk about it in the program all the time, but people need to understand like the relationship has to come before the money. Your mental health has to come before the money,
Yeah.
because otherwise you're just exacerbating a bigger problem later. And so it's just so cool that you were able to really demonstrate that given everything that went on. This season of your life, that 2020 to
Yeah.
2023 season, you will forever remember as this catalyst or this turning point. It'll be part of such a beautiful, great legacy story in your family tree for decades. So I just think it's incredible what you've done.
This isn't what we thought it was going to be by
Right.
any means, but because it isn't what we thought it was going to be, it has the opportunity to be better than we thought it was going to be because we're not held to it.
Tell me
Amazing.
about phase 3 now. How is it going for you in phase 3? What are you doing to get even wealthier?
Well, this may not be very encouraging for people. um,
She is a farmer,
we,
Carrie.
yeah. Yeah.
Sheep are expensive.
Yeah, no, you buy them as tiny little babies that you have to get up 4 times a day to feed, and then they're not so bad. So we hit phase 3 right before my surgery, and I was expecting to be off for about 2 weeks. Things didn't go super hot, so I ended up being off for 5 weeks. It wasn't part of the plan, but because you plan for things that aren't part of the plan, it was okay. And we were just kind of getting going again. And then unfortunately, my husband was hurt at work, so he's been off now for a little bit. So I know like we say accelerate into phase 3, and like we sat down the day that we paid off our debt, we went out for lunch afterwards and we set some solid goals on like how are we going to build, where do we want our emergency fund to be by which point, and like how are we going to do it. And we had all these goals, and now we've just had to redirect them into not moving backwards, and that's okay. When you plan for the unexpected is less bad, because
Mhm.
if you're trying to manage the stress of an injury or an illness on top of having to figure out like, oh, this was not part of our financial plan, it just makes it so much harder. So currently we're coasting, we are making things happen. But like going forward, our biggest thing is beefing up that emergency fund, because we're both self-employed now. We are like looking to build kind of that float in our business so we can look at having consistent paid vacations to prioritize that time as our family. And then throughout everything, we've always continued to contribute to our retirement. And we're going to do that. I have to make some changes just the way that my income is changing. So I have to change how I'm paying into my retirement to just make sure that we're maximizing our tax benefits.
Mhm.
I was talking to my husband last night. I said, like, I know they always ask, like, what's next or like what.
How
And
did
like,
you know, Suzanne? See, she
I know.
obviously, this
Listen
proves
to
that she listens to the podcast because
I know.
that's
Like,
exactly, it was like on the tip of my tongue. Did you see? Like the words were starting to come off here. I was about to ask you, what does your future look like, Suzanne?
yeah. So I think that's the biggest thing for us is like we never genuinely thought we could be financially free. We just didn't think as like very small scale farmers, self-employed, we've got 4 tiny humans, the experiences that we want them to have. We kind of always thought it was one or the other. And we've really realized it's not. In addition to all of that debt, we also have put more than $35,000 into my business that we were able to cash flow. So like when we think about those things as well, when we're thinking about building wealth, like it really is going to be incredible once
Good.
that ball is rolling.
I think what's really interesting is that, what I've been observing quietly from the sidelines is with hubby's injury right now, it's
Mhm.
requiring Suzanne to be really strategic with time versus money. And
Mhm.
she's making a lot of really great decisions that are leveraging her time while hubby can't work. And this is going to be the secret for her for building wealth, because it can be really easy when you get a farm to buy yourself a job for the rest of your life, buy yourself chores for the rest of your life.
Mhm.
But what she's doing, I don't know if you know you're doing this or not, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but what you're doing is you're actually creating a business out of this farm. And
Mhm.
you are hiring people who can do the things like this injury is a gift, because
Mhm.
if hubby continues to work at the rate he's working, you are forever just, the old saying, give up working 40 hours a week for someone else to work 80 hours a week for yourselves. But what you're doing is you're really learning. If hubby were to just sit in a hammock for the rest of his life, could this farm, could this business, could all of these things run themselves?
Mm-hmm.
And when you both can get to the answer, yes, all of the things that we're doing runs itself without us being active in the business all the time or requiring to work. Now you're financially free. So I'm watching her and she's making these decisions now. We don't have to talk about them because it's like, still, I know you're in process. Yesterday, you were making some decisions about it, but that is going to be the secret going forward. So, I think in terms of what's next for you is continuing to master time versus money, not just money. That's going to be a secret for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think that I don't want to miss my kids growing up. Like, I don't want to become so entrenched in my growth and the growth of my business that I forget to be here for them and be here with them. Keeping that in mind, I didn't think that I could do that. I thought I could have a business, a successful business, or I could be present for my family. And like, really, it's only in the past couple months that I've realized that I can actually do both and do both very successfully.
Mhm.
So
I
Well,
love that.
congratulations. I'm
Thank you.
so pumped for you.
Just as we were wrapping up, you probably know I'm going to ask this question too, Suzanne. Tell me about what having Erin in your corner means and having had access to get the hell out of debt.
we've really overcome are continuing to work to overcome our money blocks. And I think that's why I fell in love with the program in the beginning, is understanding how your brain works changes your behaviors. If you don't understand how your brain is programmed, you can't change your behaviors. And I knew this is how my brain was programmed, but I didn't know how to rewrite that programming. And I think that that really is what Get the Hell Out of Debt has changed for me, is to be able to help me rewrite those patterns that I got stuck in or that I tend to get stuck in. It's given us the joy of knowing that we will be financially free, which is so exciting. So even like right now, we're really in the trenches trying to figure out how things are going to work while Matt is off. And we're moving into field trip season on the farm. So things are like chaotic and costly before money is flowing in. And like, we plan for that all year. So it's really easy to get bogged down in it right now because you don't feel like you're making progress. But like, tracking your net worth, it is showing you, it's your tangible sign of progress. So giving me that, it's something we had never done before because I didn't think we had enough money to make it worthwhile.
Mm.
And then, like, we know we would have been okay financially. We were always okay financially, and we would have continued to be okay. But now we get to be better than okay, which is so exciting for what that means for our future.
I love it. Okay, well, please give your parents, since they're close by, a high five from
Yeah.
both of us.
Will do. They have all of our kids right now.
Oh, they do, good. And also, I'm gonna need to see some photos of these goats.
Yeah, sheep.
Sheep.
Yeah,
God.
we
See, this
almost
is
got
how
goats this year.
I was gonna say, I am such an anti-farm girl. Like, I don't even know the difference between a sheep and a goat.
Goats are miserable and sheep are lovely.
Okay,
That's
good.
the differentiation.
That's like you and me, Erin. We're the sheep and the goat.
I'm currently Googling if you're allowed to bring a sheep on Southwest Airlines, but they say cats and dogs only.
Shucks.
So
The sheep might be better behaved.
Okay, so summer money camp is coming up like next month.
yes, I'm so excited. I do it once a year and it's my excuse to behave like a child for a month, except for we get to learn things about money.
Okay, but what I want to know is, are the Pantry Olympics part of summer money camp?
Oh, kind of.
Is it?
Kind of. So at summer money camp, we meet for 30 minutes once early when the rooster crows.
When the sheep is, what does a sheep do? Does a sheep baa?
Bray, buying. I,
don't know. I don't know.
it's more
Suzanne,
like
we
a
need your help.
meh,
Suzanne.
meh. It's more like that, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, when the rooster, but up when the rooster crows, we get up and we spend 30 minutes together in the morning. And we do 10 minutes of teaching, or I'll just teach you something. And then you spend 10 minutes with your money. So it's like action taking piece.
Mhm.
And then I do a 10-minute Q&A and then we literally hang up and off we go. And then we do it the next day and we do the next day. What it builds for people is the skill of spending 10 minutes every day with your money. Because some people don't understand what that means. Like, what am I going to do for 10 minutes? And we have a bunch of testimonials from people who did it last time, which I'm sure we'll get to or read to you in time. But what's cool about it is it really does start to transform the way, just like what Suzanne was talking about, the way you view money and your psychology around money in such a cool way. But we kind of do the Pantry Olympics. I'm not going to spoil it for everybody who's attending summer camp this year, but we do practice resourcefulness all the time. So you come out of summer camp after a month of having been your most resourceful, your most creative, and people's net worths go way, way up in a month where normally the rest of the world is spending.